Well, hello there, and good to be back. I have to warn you of a couple things here before we launch into this episode. Number one, as you can tell, maybe I still have a pretty bad cold, flu, whatever this is, so my voice is crunchy. I guess is a word that comes to mind for me. And then also, I noticed as I was editing this that you can hear because I'm wearing a gaming headset as I record this, which is a little absurd because I have a proper, voiceover mic, but I'm wearing my gaming headset and you can hear my cords slapping in this recording. So sorry about that. And future episodes, I'll use my little 990 MXL 990. You can look that up if you want. I love it, and it's a good, reasonably priced mic. Anywho, welcome back, and thanks so much for joining. And we're going to get right back into Chapter 2, and today we are going to be wrapping Chapter 2 so that we can move in to the Eightfold Path as we welcome in the new year. And Happy New Year to you. Here we go. So now we are getting into the final section here of Chapter 2. And so far, we've just been exploring the backstory, right? So, the story of Siddhartha Gautama and through his own, teachings, how he described it and talked about it. As I mentioned, once we finish this chapter, we'll be getting right into the Eightfold Path, beginning with right view. So this subheading is the path factors and their relationships. Sutta 46. The Blessed One said, "Now what, monks, is the Noble Eightfold Path? Right view, right resolve, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, right concentration. And what, monks, is right view? Knowledge with regard to, or in terms of, stress, knowledge with regard to the origination of stress, knowledge with regard to the cessation of stress, knowledge with regard to the way of practice leading to the cessation of stress. This, monks, is called right view. And what, monks, is right resolve? Resolve for renunciation, resolve for non-ill will, resolve for harmlessness. This, monks, is called right resolve. And what, monks, is right speech? Abstaining from lying, abstaining from divisive speech, abstaining from harsh speech, abstaining from idle chatter. This, monks, is called right speech. And what, monks, is right action? Abstaining from taking life, abstaining from stealing, abstaining from sexual intercourse. This, monks, is called right action. And then in brackets here, it says DN 22 and MN 141 define this factor in this way. Quote, and what is right action? Abstaining from taking life, from stealing, and from sexual misconduct. This is called right action. And what, monks, is right livelihood? Oh, close brackets. There we go. Boom. And what, monks, is right livelihood? There is the case where a disciple of the noble ones, having abandoned dishonest livelihood, keeps his life going with right livelihood. This, monks, is called right livelihood. I love that, and really looking forward to getting into that more, because that I love how he kind of describes a little bit more with the others, but this is just kind of vague, and so can't wait to unpack right livelihood when we get to that. And what, monks, is right effort? There is the case where a monk generates desire, endeavors, activates, persistence, upholds, and exerts his intent for the sake of the non-arising of evil, unskillful dhammas that have not yet arisen. He generates desire, endeavors, activates, persistence, upholds, and exerts his intent for the sake of the abandoning of evil, unskillful dhammas that have arisen. He generates desire, endeavors, activates persistence, upholds and exerts his intent for the sake of the arising of skillful dhammas that have not yet arisen. He generates desires, endeavors, activates persistence, upholds and exerts his intent for the maintenance, non-confusion, increase, plenitude, development, and culmination of skillful dhammas that have arisen. This, monks, is called right effort. And again, this is really describing meditation, right? And in through the process of meditation, and of course, as we'll come to when we get into the rites, there are procedures and processes that can help with this and assist with this. You can kind of generate, right? You're kind of generating this. It's almost like an engine, right? You're kind of tuning it and tuning it and tuning it, and and that's why it's so important to tune it for future potential unskillful behavior. And again, I'm not a big fan of the word evil. This might be ignorance for me, but I don't know that evil is a word that is really true to Buddhism. It's kind of more of a Christian word from my understanding, but, it's more of a kind of dualistic, kind of concept, not a non-dualistic concept, that which Buddhism is more non-dualistic, but, my understanding would be more like unskillful. It's unskillful. If you don't like the word evil, just, unskillful. And here's where I do encourage you to take what you like and leave the rest, because unless someone can show me in the text somewhere that I'm wrong, I believe that I am not, in fact, wrong about the word evil. So, yeah, you're going to have to call me out in the Discord server, and I'm always happy to discuss. And what, monks, is right mindfulness? There is the case where a monk remains focused on the body in and of itself, ardent, alert, and mindful, subduing greed and distress with reference to the world. He remains focused on feelings in and of themselves, ardent, alert, and mindful, subduing greed and distress with reference to the world. He remains focused on the mind in and of itself, ardent, alert, and mindful, subduing greed and distress with reference to the world. He remains focused on dhammas in and of themselves, ardent, alert, and mindful, subduing greed and distress with reference to the world. This, monks, is called right mindfulness. And so again, right, we're getting into the practices, the very action aspect of Buddhism. It's written right into the Eightfold Path, Again, this is describing Vipassana, which is considered the meditation practice that Buddha taught. This idea of, he begins with, what is right mindfulness? He begins with focusing on the body, sensations of the body. I was just talking to somebody in the Discord server the other day about, we were talking about the word Vipassana. Again, I'm a Westerner, so remember, just bear that in mind. The different ways that I've been taught the practice of Vipassana. And, one way was the way, the Goenka, who is a teacher, a guide of Vipassana. And, he has a very particular method that he uses in his 10-day free retreats that have grown quite popular in the West over the past maybe decade or so. And, in his particular approach to Vipassana, he uses a body scanning technique so that the mind is actually quite busy scanning the body. And I have to assume that he is approaching Vipassana from this particular perspective because of the critical aspect of, in right mindfulness, of being with and remaining focused on the body. And then you'll hear other teachers talking about how, maybe the Vipassana for them is not quite so mentally, cognitively active. It's kind of scanning or general sort of loose kind of, And so he's talking about, the body in reference to the world, right? And again, this is pretty radical. And, I've heard all kinds of interesting conversations about what Buddha meant here and,
what all this encompassed. And I'm sure from a very esoteric perspective, I guess someone who was wholly awake, could probably sit with their body on fire and just be able to meditate through that. I mean, sure. Theoretically, yeah. I mean, monks have done that. I'm very much a work in progress. I'm anything but awake. I train in being with the body here. Somebody mentioned here on the Discord server this morning something that I didn't respond to just because I don't know. I don't write a lot of text on. That's not really how I roll, I guess, on the socials. But I was thinking about what this person said about how, they found it really helpful to not kind of get into a habit of just meditating in one position, in one location, in one environment, kind of developing a, that becoming just another kind of ritual that you kind of bang into, right? Which actually would be very counter to the Buddhist practice on a certain level, but on another level, it's key to the practice, right? Again, see earlier sections. And boy, do I agree with that. And I find that the more kind of, one could say ritualistic, or the more kind of, true to the Buddhist approach, right? The sitting on your ass and sitting in Vipassana, right? That we do that every day to help us with being able to meet and greet the world without greed and distress. Or another way to put that could be clinging and aversion, right? So it can help us to do the rest of it. And, so I would say, and both, if you're Buddhist, right? Both, not one or the other. So then gets into feelings, right? And now we're really getting into, I think, what neuroscience is beginning to understand, and that the Buddhists already knew, right? But that Buddha saw, the Buddha also saw, is that our feelings are a part of what creates karma in this life, right? The trigger, thought, feeling, response. Trigger, thought, feeling, response. Zit, 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 zit. There's a right? There's a quality to that, isn't there? So when you meditate and you observe this play out in the mental contraption called the mind, right? Number one, you begin to realize that you don't really have any control over it. So now either you can accept that, or you can choose to not accept that and to fight it and struggle with it. That's when a lot of people just stop meditating, right? They just don't want to deal with it. They don't want to acknowledge it. They don't want to look at it. They just don't want to deal with it. So anyway, there's a lot going on here, but right mindfulness, we're really getting into the meat and potatoes of the practice itself. And what monks is right concentration? Also another kind of meditation in Buddhism. And what monks is right concentration? There is the case where a monk, quite secluded from sensuality, secluded from unskillful dhammas, enters and remains in the first jhana, rapture and pleasure born of seclusion, accompanied by directed thought and evaluation. With the stilling of directed thoughts and evaluations, he enters and remains in the second jhana, rapture and pleasure born of concentration, unification of awareness, free from directed thought and evaluation, internal assurance. With the fading of rapture, he remains equanimous, mindful, and alert, and senses pleasure with the body. He enters and remains in the third jhana, of which the noble ones declare, equanimous and mindful, he has a pleasant abiding. With the abandoning of pleasure and pain, as with the earlier disappearance of elation and distress, He enters and remains in the fourth jhana, purity of equanimity and mindfulness, neither pleasure nor pain. This, monks, is called right concentration. And I think when I hear a lot of people talking about meditation in general, both in this Discord server, but just in general, because the idea of meditation has become, very popular in the United States where I live. And it has been that way, Westerners have traveled to the East and have, Jung, William James before him, have traveled to the East, and brought back, taking what they like and leaving the rest, right? Brought back things from the East. And so that's been going on in Western psychology now for well over 50 years. And I think oftentimes, right mindfulness and right concentration are typically the two stones in the Eightfold Path that psychology in the West often has kind of taken out of the Eightfold Path and kind of tried to apply to their kind of Western psychological framework. I've definitely heard arguments about from many, typically people who are, more dualistic in their religious views, that this is not a state that one should cultivate. To my view, that's coming from the mouth of someone who's never experienced it. It's just ignorance, and I mean that with no disrespect. I mean that in the pure definition of the term ignorance. Right, that you just don't know. You haven't seen it for yourself, and so you've never experienced what this is like. Right? This no pleasure, no pain. This being able to train the mind. I heard someone say, recently that Buddhism was just as simple as, not having any desire. Remarkable oversimplification, right? Remarkable demonstration of ignorance. Well, I encourage anyone who wishes to speak of Buddhism to find out much more about it before you, right? But shouldn't we all be doing that? If we were going to be really actually responsible humans with mouthpieces. Yeah. So yeah, there's a lot of ideas out there about what right concentration and right mindfulness means. But again, remember that I'm speaking about it within the context of its origins in Buddhism, right? That it's 2 of the 8 stones in the Eightfold Path. Notice I didn't say steps. That's because they don't go in order. They interact with each other. This is why the Buddha said, please don't take them out of context. You all know how I feel about what the West has done to Buddhism. But yeah, yes, right concentration. So again, going back to Goenka, and I was just describing this retreat actually to somebody the other day in this server. If you go to this Goenka retreat, you go to this 10-day, 11-day, I think it's 11 days, I recall, retreat. Every day when you get up in the morning, you get up in the morning, it's like 4 or something like that, take care of all the hygiene things. And then, monk will come around, ring the bell saying it's time to go to the meditation hall. We all go to the meditation hall. And this is pretty much how it goes every day, right? Until you leave. And you're meditating about 9 hours a day, I would say. So you're beginning with right concentration when you get in the hall. And so maybe you're doing that for however long you need to, really. And, how we're trained is to focus the attention on the nostrils and the breath coming in and out of the nostrils. And as you continue to redirect your attention and bring it back to the nostrils and where your breath is coming in and out of the nostrils, sensation, we would do that for a good hour and a half maybe. And then we would pivot to right mindfulness. We would pivot to the one that I just read. And again, I just told you how Goenka taught it, right? The scan, the actual mental scanning of the body, beginning with the toe. And then when you move through the entire body, you just begin again. So hopefully, anyway, I did my best there in explaining, the difference between right mindfulness and right concentration. And by the way, that was the end of SN 45:8. Okay. So this is Sutta 47. Monks. Ignorance is the leader in the attainment of unskillful dhammas, followed by lack of shame and lack of compunction. In an unknowledgeable person, immersed in ignorance, wrong view arises. In one of wrong view, wrong resolve arises. In one of wrong resolve, wrong speech. In one of wrong speech, wrong action. In one of wrong action, wrong livelihood. In one of wrong livelihood, wrong effort. In one of wrong effort, wrong mindfulness. In one of wrong mindfulness, wrong concentration arises. So we become aware of the sensations in the body. We become aware of the feelings in the body in relationship to the outside world. And concentration is much more about directing your attention, right? So it makes sense, doesn't it? It makes sense that if the downstream nature, right, of this first paragraph in the sutta, that if the downstream, if the upstream processes are wrong, then downstream, we're not concentrating on the right things. We're not concentrating on skillful things. We're not concentrating on things that will release us from the karmic wheel. And again, if you don't like the idea of the supernatural karma, then again, can you think of it in this life? In this life. What, you don't think that people who behave unskillfully don't experience any inner conflict? Clear knowing is the leader in the attainment of skillful dhammas, followed by shame and compunction. In a knowledgeable person immersed in clear knowing, right view arises. In one of right view, right resolve arises. In one of right resolve, right speech. In one of right speech, right action. In one of right action, right livelihood. In one of right livelihood, right effort. In one of right effort, right mindfulness. In one of right mindfulness, right concentration arises. And that was SN 45:1. Sutta 48. The Blessed One said, "Now what, monks, is noble right concentration with its supports and requisite conditions? Any singleness of mind equipped with these 7 factors: right view, right resolve, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, and right mindfulness, is called noble right concentration with its supports and requisite conditions." This is what we're doing with the mind if we're working with the mind, which we're always working with the mind. Of course, right view is the forerunner. And how is right view the forerunner? One discerns wrong view as wrong view and right view as right view. This is one's right view. And what is wrong view? There is nothing given, nothing offered, nothing sacrificed. There is no fruit or result of good or bad actions. There is no this world, no next world, no mother, no father, no spontaneously reborn beings, no Brahmins or contemplatives who, faring rightly and practicing rightly, proclaim this world and the next after having directly known and realized it for themselves. This is wrong view. Because, we really are getting into the principles of karma, right? And, Buddha is warning us away from nihilism or materialism, right? So nothing given, nothing offered, nothing sacrificed. So you're living for yourself. You don't care about anything. Nothing matters to you. You don't give a shit, right? Just kind of denying the power and the kind of healing properties of giving, of compassion, of generosity. And so these are the spirit, we're getting into, these are the spiritual components of Buddhism. Where Buddhism is not just a philosophy, it is a religion and it has spiritual components. And so for me, what do I do with that? Do I just deny it and just take what I like and leave the rest? No, you know how I feel about that. I don't leave anything. What I say is, this is hard for me. I don't know about this, but I'm willing to say that I don't know. I also know that I don't need to know because I've practiced enough to see for myself some of these other things. Not supernatural things that I've seen for myself. No, I've seen my own mind, and I've seen what I could do to train my mind. There is no fruit or result of good or bad actions. So again, he's speaking directly about karma here, right? That if you're denying that karma exists, that's not right view. And again, what I find helpful here for me personally is that I see how my wrong view in this life creates bad results for me and for others. And again, this goes back to what we were talking about earlier, right? About this idea of reflection. You reflect. You reflect on your behavior and you don't lie to yourself, right? You don't empty all the water out of the water dipper. You don't turn the water dipper upside down. Get real with yourself. Here, there is no this world, no next world, right? So again, this is clearly speaking to the idea of rebirth. Okay, and what is right view? Right view, I tell you, is of two sorts. There is right view with effluence, siding with merit, resulting in acquisitions. There is right view that is noble, without affluence, transcendent, a factor of the path. And what is the right view with effluence, siding with merit, resulting in acquisitions? There is what is given, what is offered, what is sacrificed. There are fruits and results of good and bad actions. There is this world and the next world. There is mother and father. There are spontaneously reborn beings. There are contemplatives and Brahmins who, faring rightly and practicing rightly, proclaim this world and the next after having directly known and realized it for themselves. This is the right view with effluence, siding with merit, resulting in acquisitions. And what is the right view that is noble, without affluence, transcendent, a factor of the path? The discernment, the faculty of discernment, the strength of discernment, analysis of Dhammas as a factor for awakening, the path factor of right view of one developing the noble path, whose mind is noble, whose mind is without effluence, who is fully possessed of the noble path. This is the right view that is noble, without effluence, transcendent, a factor of the path. One tries to abandon wrong view and to enter into right view. This is one's right effort. One is mindful to abandon wrong view and to enter and remain in right view. This is one's right mindfulness. Thus, these three Dhammas, right view, right effort, and right mindfulness, run and circle around right view. And so, essentially, again, this passage is really highlighting how right action and right view and right mindfulness, the ways in which they're interdependent, the ways that they support each other and kind of act as a reinforcing cycle that can help the practitioner to live in accordance with the Dhamma. And so going back and looking at this idea of wrong livelihood, scheming, persuading, hinting, belittling, and pursuing gain with gain. And so scheming, this idea of deceiving or manipulating others for your own benefit, right? Being dishonest, lacking transparency, manipulating and being deceitful for your own gain. And so in this context, again, I think that this idea of persuading, again, has more to do with persuading using manipulative tactics, coercive tactics. Again, it comes back to this idea of intention, right? If you're persuading, trying to manipulate others for your own gain, well, that behavior, that unskillful behavior is arising from your own craving, your own attachment, right? One's intention. Yeah, really, really critical. Hinting, again,
This idea of manipulating, influencing, trying to shape and form and mold the opinions of others once again for your own gain, to feed one's own clinging, one's own craving, with complete disregard for the autonomy of others. And this has been a really big one for me, the last couple of several years, really. I say it's even been a really big theme of my life, is trying to understand what right livelihood means for me. I would also say that my practice, my dedication to the Noble Eightfold Path has informed almost wholly, big decisions that I've made to change my career, and it's been painful, required a long and grieving period that I continue to grieve. But that's what we do, right? I mean, if one decides to take up a map, whether it be Buddhism or some other kind of map, Stoicism, right? Whatever map one decides to follow to game and play at life with more ease, well, these are the kinds of decisions that we're faced with, right? Again, we can use the Dhamma and the Dharma to figure this out for ourselves, Of those, right view is the forerunner. And how is right view the forerunner? In one of right view, right resolve comes to be. In one of right resolve, right speech comes to be. In one of right speech, right action. In one of right action, right livelihood. In one of right livelihood, right effort. In one of right effort, right mindfulness. In one of right mindfulness, right concentration. In one of right concentration, right knowledge. In one of right knowledge, right release comes to be. Thus, the learner is endowed with 8 factors, and the Arahant with 10. And so again, this passage is kind of, reiterating the idea that, an Arahant, one who's fully awakened, they have 2 additional rights that they perceive, that they have come to perceive for themselves. Right knowledge, right? Direct insight into the nature of reality. Direct insight into impermanence. Dukkha, right? Anatta, non-self. And right release, the liberation of the mind and all of its attachments and clinging and boundings and bindings and the yoke. The idea of right release sounds lovely to me. Feels very far away. But I am grateful that I found this map and that, it's just really helps and continues to help me in my life profoundly, So that was the end of the Sutta, MN 117. And we're going to continue on here. Bottom of page 108, Sutta 49. I do not envision any one other Dhamma by which unarisen, unskillful Dhammas arise, and arisen, unskillful Dhammas go to growth and proliferation, like wrong view. When a person has wrong view, unarisen, unskillful Dhammas arise, and arisen, unskillful Dhammas go to growth and proliferation. Again, remember the concept of feeding, right? We're always feeding the mind, for good or for ill. I do not envision any one other Dhamma by which unarisen, skillful Dhammas arise, and arisen, skillful Dhammas go to growth and proliferation like right view. When a person has right view, unarisen skillful dhammas arise, and arisen skillful dhammas go to growth and proliferation. Just as when a neem tree seed, a bitter creeper seed, or a bitter melon seed is placed in moist soil, whatever nutriment it takes from the soil and the water, all conduces to its bitterness, acridity, and distastefulness. Why is that? Because of the evil nature of the seed. In the same way, when a person has wrong view, whatever bodily deeds he undertakes in line with that view, whatever verbal deeds, whatever mental deeds he undertakes in line with that view, whatever intentions, whatever determinations, whatever vows, whatever fabrications, all lead to what is disagreeable, unpleasing, unappealing, unprofitable, and stressful. Why is that? Because of the evil nature of the view. Just as when a sugarcane seed, a rice grain, or a grape seed is placed in moist soil, whatever nutriment it takes from the soil and the water, all conduces to its sweetness, tastiness, and unalloyed delectability. Why is that? Because of the auspicious nature of the seed. In the same way, when a person has right view, whatever bodily deeds he undertakes in line with that view, whatever verbal deeds, whatever mental deeds he undertakes in line with that view, whatever fabrications, all lead to what is agreeable, pleasing, charming, profitable, and easeful. Why is that? Because of the auspicious nature of the view. And that's in AN 1:181 to 82 and 189 to 90. So this is a great setup for the first right in the Noble Eightfold Path, which is right view. And again, here, I think, the Buddha is explaining, why right view is considered foundational, why it's listed as first, even though each of the 8 stones is interdependent and reinforces each other. The Buddha considers right view foundational, kind of understanding, again, impermanence, that suffering exists in the world and in our lives, that we will die. And the law of karma, right? Cause and effect. And this wisdom, and returning to this wisdom, maybe discussing it with admirable friends or in Sangha, remembering this view lays the groundwork for the remaining views, right? Lays the groundwork for the kind of speech we engage in, the kind of livelihood we choose, the ways in which we take action, the ways in which we think. And so we are coming up here on the end of chapter 2. And so here we are with Sutta 50. Visakha. Is the Noble Eightfold Path fabricated or unfabricated? Sister Dhammadina, we've talked about her before, right? And I'll drop some more stuff in the Discord server about her. The Noble Eightfold Path is fabricated. Visakha. And are the 3 aggregates of virtue, concentration, and discernment included under the Noble Eightfold Path, lady? Or is the Noble Eightfold Path included under the 3 aggregates? Sister Dhammadina, the 3 aggregates are not included under the Noble Eightfold Path, friend Visakha. But the Noble Eightfold Path is included under the 3 aggregates. Right speech, right action, and right livelihood come under the aggregate of virtue. Right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration come under the aggregate of concentration. Right view and right resolve come under the aggregate of discernment, and that's MN 44. And here he's got a note In other words, not every instance of discernment, say, would count as right view, even though right view counts as a form of discernment. And similarly with the other path factors and aggregates. Sutta 51. Concentration nurtured with virtue is of great fruit, great reward. Discernment nurtured with concentration is of great fruit, great reward. The mind nurtured with discernment is rightly released from the effluence, i.e. the effluence of sensuality, the effluent of becoming, the effluent of ignorance. And this is DN 16. And so again, this sutta is highlighting the progressive nature of this cultivation. The way that they reinforce each other, support each other, and that they are progressive through practice. So the interdependence of virtue, concentration, and discernment leads to freedom, liberation. And it's how they work together to help to purify our mind, right? To help us not feed unskillful thought streams and to cultivate skillful thought streams. And here's Sutta 52. Brahman, just as one hand would wash the other hand, or one foot would wash the other foot, in the same way, discernment is well washed by virtue. Virtue is well washed by discernment. Where there is virtue, there is discernment. Where there is discernment, there is virtue. A virtuous person has discernment. A discerning person, virtue. And further, virtue and discernment are reckoned as supreme in the world. And here in brackets, Bhikkhu says the passage goes on to define virtue with a long list of virtues: sense restraint, mindfulness and alertness in one's activities, contentment, and the abandoning of the hindrances. It defines discernment as the practice of jhana together with the direct knowledge based on jhana, culminating in the knowledge of the ending of the effluence. And that's DN 4. That's Sutta 53. There's no jhana for one with no discernment. No discernment for one with no jhana, but one with both jhana and discernment. He is on the verge of unbinding. And that's DHP 372. So this idea of no jhana without discernment. And again, jhana represents those deep meditative states that a practitioner can experience through practice, right? Through the practice of concentration and mental stillness. But this passage is suggesting that without discernment, jhana becomes just mental stillness, right? And not that there's anything wrong with that, right? I mean, psychologists, neuroscientists, humanity is beginning to understand the great psychological and well-being benefits of mental stillness. But without discernment, it's just that. It risks just becoming a pleasant, but, not really particularly productive state. And that alone isn't going to lead to liberation, says the Buddha. That's not going to cut it by itself. So no discernment without jhana. Discernment. Again, in Buddhism, discernment is that really salient understanding of the three marks of existence. Anatta, right? Non-self. There is no self, right? There is no self. That's a fabricated invention. Dukkha. There is suffering in life. There is suffering inherent in being alive. Impermanence, right? So that's discernment in Buddhism. So here, the Buddha is saying, well, without jhana, right? Without those meditative states that we cultivate, the mind won't have the stability that it needs and the focus and the clarity that it needs for deeper insight. It's just a scattered, restless mind that won't be able in that state to experience Buddhist discernment. Yeah. What a cool way to leave chapter 2, right? What a really cool call to action. A great way to kick us off into chapter 3 in right view. And can I just say that I also love that chapter 2 ended on page 111. Yeah. Oh, gotta love the cold, right? Gotta love it. So that's it for chapter 2. If you're joining me, thank you again for joining me. I really appreciate it. And I'm really excited that we get to start on the Noble Eightfold Path within the first week of the new year. That's really exciting to me. And so the next episode will be beginning with chapter 3 at the top of page 112, and we'll be taking a look at right view. So again, thank you for listening if you're listening, and take care of yourself. Be well. Bye.